Right, now that we are in the n8n workflow, let's explain the workflow very quickly. So at first, this one is a trigger node. So basically, when I will click on execute workflow, so this trigger node will actually get started. It will actually wait for data to fetch from the Fabric Forge, basically this JSON file. It will actually wait for the JSON file from our Fabric Forge. And after getting the data, it will actually process the data, uh, basically all the necessary input configuration, and will consolidate it. After that, it will create an initial authentication, and based on the initial authentication, it will generate a bearer token. And using the bearer token, it will call a HTTP request, basically a REST API. It will make a REST API call to check if the workspace that we are wanting to create, if this is already exist in our Fabric ecosystem. If the workspace already existed, then the workspace status will show exist. If it is not existed, then it will show create. And based on the two status, there are actually two branches. So if this one exists, then it will go to the true form. It will go to the true path, and then it will start checking the workspace. It will fetch the workspace ID. Then it will check the lake houses and other things. But if the workspace was not there, then it will actually create the workspace. It will actually assign the capacity to the workspace. So in the prepare rule assignment, it will use the user ID we provided in the Fabric Forge, and it will assign the user into the workspace. Otherwise, you will not be able to see the workspace in your Fabric. After basically the workspace assignment will happen via another REST API call. And each of these, like create workspace, assign capacity, each of these are actually REST API calls. Okay, so this is when the workspace was not there. But suppose the workspace was there, then it will just consolidate the workspace information. Then it will actually check for the lake houses, or if basically if the lake houses that we are trying to create is already there in the workspaces or not. And then it will consolidate the lake house status. And again, from the status, if the lake houses are already there, then it will just move on to aggregate results. And if the lake houses are not created, then it will consolidate the information about the lake houses to create. And after that, it will actually play a loop, generate a token. After that, create lake house and then process the result. So basically, if you have like couple of lake houses to create, so you have to generate token for each of the lake houses to create. So that is why we are playing a loop here, and by this, all the necessary lake houses actually gets created. And after the creation, we are again consolidating all the lakehouse information in these steps, and we are now moving on to checking for if the is there. If the warehouse is there, then it will move on to it will follow the true path and basically aggregate the warehouse results and move on to the other items. And if the warehouse is not there, then again, just like the lake houses, there will be a loop. It will play, generate tokens for each warehouses to create, and it will basically create the warehouses. And finally, we are now checking what are the necessary items are there. And basically, this node is checking if the notebooks we're trying to create, if those are there. So those are there, then the status will be shown here. If the notebooks are not there, then also the status will be shown here. And based on the status, if the notebooks are already there, then it will just move on to the next steps. And if the notebooks we want to create is not there, then it will just create the notebooks by via the same method we created lake houses and warehouses. Moving on, we are now mapping the lake houses, because in the notebooks we have to map the lake houses in order to create tables, right? So in this JavaScript code, we are actually mapping the notebooks to the lake houses. And so we are actually now creating a loop. So at first, it will authenticate the OpenAI, and based on the based on the table structure to create, it will automatically create the PySpark code for the notebook, and it will basically write the code inside the notebook. Okay, so whenever we are actually calling for update notebook dissemination here, it's doing two work. The first one is it's attaching the lakehouse, appropriate lakehouse, and also updating the PySpark code in the notebook. And finally, before execution for the notebook, we have to again generate a token, and after that, we have to execute the notebook. So if there are multiple notebooks, so it can actually loop, and it can create multiple notebooks by following this path. Okay, and after creation of all the things, then it's just gonna get end. So this is basically the whole workflow using n8n. So at first it will check for the workspace, um, and then it will check for the lake houses, warehouses, notebooks, uh, create necessary items. If it needs, it will just skip if it does not need to create those, and finally it will execute the notebook that will eventually create the table structure in the houses. So this is how the n8n actually working.